You try so hard to please everyone, but at the end of the day, you still feel like no one truly respects you. What if pleasing others is actually your greatest weakness? Today, you're going to uncover a dark truth about pleasing people, one that Machiavelli knew long before you were born. From an early age, you were taught to smile even when your throat was tight, to say yes while every part of you is screaming for a no. Kindness, politeness, likability. These became the mantras you repeated just to be accepted. But over time, the line between choosing to please and needing to please became dangerously blurred. Now, you live in a constant state of emotional alertness, monitoring your words, controlling your gestures, always trying to guess who they want you to be. The thing is, pleasing others was never just a virtue. It's often a disguised form of deep psychological submission. Have you ever wondered why you feel so exhausted? This tiredness doesn't come from doing too much or sleeping too little. It comes from the quiet betrayals you commit against yourself every single day. Each time you choose to please someone at the cost of your own truth, you lose a little more of who you really are. That inner distance adds up. It builds into resentment, into self-erasure, and eventually into a kind of quiet rage that lives in your chest, but has no name. You might think being kind is a sign of strength, but deep down, you know something is off with that belief. It's no coincidence that overly agreeable people are often seen as weak. A Harvard Business School study proved it. Those who are too nice are perceived as less competent and even less trustworthy. Your endless kindness isn't just not working. It's diminishing your value in the eyes of others. That's a hard truth, but it's one you need. Because people-pleasing isn't a virtue. It's a psychological fracture wrapped in politeness. Machiavelli, with brutal clarity, said it's safer to be feared than loved. Not because fear is noble, but because love depends on others, while fear depends on you. Translated into your emotional life, it means your habit of pleasing others puts you at the mercy of their approval, something you can never fully control. Your kindness, in this sense, becomes a chain disguised as morality, keeping you locked in a cycle of emotional dependency. Carl Jung warned that living only to please is to become trapped in the persona, the artificial self crafted to survive in an emotionally unsafe world. That persona isn't you. It's just a smile-shaped mask you've worn for too long to keep others comfortable. And the more you wear it, the more internally fragmented you become, leading to anxiety, guilt, depression. The real issue isn't that you're tired of pleasing. It's that you're exhausted from pretending to be someone you never really were. That hidden truth is the beginning of your transformation. To stop feeling so emotionally fractured, you must first admit that your overgiving nature is rooted in fear. And from that moment of recognition, you can begin to reclaim your boundaries, your identity, your voice. That's when real respect begins, not from how well you please, but from how deeply you stand your truth. But don't expect it to feel comfortable. Facing this truth is sharp, unsettling, and necessary. Machiavelli saw what most people ignore. Excessive pleasing isn't kindness, it's disguised submission. And that's just the first layer of the dark truth you're about to uncover. They didn't ask you who you were. They asked you to behave, to be good, to stop crying, to say thank you even when you didn't feel grateful. And so, little by little, you learned something dangerous. That approval was safer than truth. That being loved meant being agreeable. That surviving required silence, even when everything inside you was begging to be heard. This wasn't a conscious choice. It was a slow adaptation to a world that only made room for your obedience, never for your full presence. You didn't become a people pleaser by accident. You became one because it was the only way to feel safe in relationships that taught you love was conditional. Conditional on being useful, on being soft, on not disturbing the peace. And so your nervous system adapted. Read the room, scan for danger, don't upset anyone. You became hyper-aware of the moods of others, constantly managing, constantly bending. Your kindness was never just kindness. It was your armor. It was your currency for connection. But here's the cost. You've been disappearing. Slowly, quietly, but consistently. Each time you said yes when you meant no, each time you swallowed your frustration, each time you put someone else's comfort above your own limits. Now you move through life outwardly functional, maybe even admired for your empathy or calmness, but inside, there's a growing void, a sense that you're never really seen, never really known. Because how could anyone truly see you when you've made a habit of hiding behind what they want? The world has rewarded your performance. You've probably been told you're so nice, so easy to be around, so selfless. But no one ever asked if your niceness was a prison. No one ever saw the silent scream behind your smile. Because people love the version of you that doesn't confront, doesn't demand, doesn't disturb. But what about the version that's angry? That's wild? That's loud? That's tired of being emotionally edited just to be tolerated? This is the hidden trauma, the self-erasure you had to perform to feel safe. Not physical scars, but the chronic abandonment of your own truth. That's the root of your exhaustion. That's why your body sometimes shakes for no reason. Why you feel resentment you can't name. Why you collapse after social interactions. You're not weak. You've been emotionally overworking for years, carrying everyone's expectations on your back while denying your own weight. And the truth is brutal. The more you sacrifice yourself to be accepted, the more invisible you become. The more you abandon your inner authority to serve peace, the less peace you feel. Because peace without truth isn't peace. It's emotional slavery in disguise. If that landed somewhere deep, I need your help. Subscribe to this page. Like this video. That's how I keep this channel alive and keep telling truths that most people are afraid to say out loud. You've carried this burden quietly for too long, and it's not your fault. But now that you see it, you're responsible for what you do with it. There's a way out, but it won't be through more pleasing. It begins with confrontation, with allowing the discomfort of being disliked, with reclaiming the pieces of yourself you buried just to make others stay. And the first step is choosing not to disappear anymore. You've been taught that being good is the highest virtue. That if you're kind, patient, forgiving, and selfless, the world will somehow return that goodness to you. But reality doesn't work like that. And deep down, you know it. Because you've been good for years. You've swallowed anger. You've avoided conflict. You bent your needs until they snapped. And what did you get in return? Disappointment, exploitation, and the quiet, gnawing question. Does anyone even notice what I'm sacrificing? The truth is that morality, when used unconsciously, can be a mask, a shield for fear, a strategy for survival. Nietzsche didn't say it lightly. He warned that much of what we call morality is just the revenge of the powerless, the sweet words of those who've been conditioned to suppress their fire because they were never allowed to use it. You call it compassion, but sometimes it's really fear of being rejected. You call it humility, but sometimes it's a refusal to take up space. You call it understanding, but sometimes it's just self-erasure masquerading as virtue. This doesn't mean kindness is a lie, but it means the source of your kindness matters. If it comes from fear, guilt, or trauma, it's not kindness, it's manipulation. Not of others, but of yourself. You've learned to suppress your real reactions in favor of what's socially acceptable, morally palatable, emotionally easy to digest. You've chosen the path of the good one, thinking that makes you lovable. But good isn't the same as whole, and love built on performance isn't love. It's a transaction, a quiet trade of your authenticity for momentary approval. And the cost is staggering. Because the more you try to be good in ways that betray your truth, the more you separate yourself from your own vitality. You stop trusting your instincts. You start censoring your voice before it even forms into words. You enter conversations already half vanished. And worst of all, you start confusing repression with peace. That's what makes this truth so hard to face. You were being noble. You were being safe. You weren't being selfless. You were trying not to be abandoned. And no one ever told you that this kind of morality could be a cage. They praised your politeness. They rewarded your obedience. They called you an old soul or wise beyond your years, when in truth, you were just carrying emotional burdens that were never yours to begin with. But there's something else happening here, something even more dangerous. When you live in this distorted form of goodness for too long, you start to resent those who live freely. You envy the ones who speak their mind, who walk away, who don't explain themselves, because their freedom reminds you of your cage. And instead of breaking out, you cling even tighter to your moral identity, because it's the only thing you've been allowed to be proud of. And that's how the mask grows roots. You start believing it's who you are. You defend it. You make yourself smaller just to stay consistent with it. Until one day, you realize you've spent your whole life trying to be good, but never dared to be real. And the real you? That's not something the world defines. It's something you reclaim. It looks like kindness. You smile, you nod, you offer help before they even ask. You avoid conflict, downplay your needs, act like nothing bothers you. On the surface, people see someone gentle, someone easy to love. But if we stripped away the performance, what would be left isn't peace, it's fear. Because the truth you've never said out loud is this: you're not being kind, you're terrified of being disliked. Every time you say yes when you mean no, it's not generosity, it's panic. Panic that saying no will make them pull away. That setting a boundary will get you labeled difficult, dramatic, or selfish. So instead, you offer pieces of yourself like tokens, hoping it will be enough to stay needed, wanted, safe. But what starts as a defense soon becomes an identity. And now you wear your niceness like armor, not realizing it's also a cage. Let's name this cycle. You avoid confrontation because you fear rejection. You suppress anger because you fear being misunderstood. You overextend yourself because you fear being forgotten. But the cycle doesn't end there. After all this pleasing, you don't feel closer to people. You feel invisible. You resent them for not seeing your pain. You resent yourself for never expressing it. And then comes the collapse. Emotional exhaustion, social withdrawal, a sense of living a life that doesn't feel like yours. And this fear of being disliked, is so powerful because it's not just about today. It's ancient. It comes from the little version of you who learned that love was conditional. That any mistake, any loud feeling, any sign of anger could cost you connection. So you edited yourself. You became easy to love by becoming easy to ignore. And now, even as an adult, you still think safety lies in being agreeable. But what you call safety is slowly erasing you. Here's the brutal paradox. The more you try to be liked, the more you abandon who you really are. And ironically, the more you abandon yourself, the more people sense it and stop truly respecting you. Because people don't respect niceness. They respect clarity. They respect boundaries. They respect someone who knows their own limits and doesn't apologize for having them. But you've been taught to fear that. You've been trained to think that strength makes you unlovable. It's not your fault. The fear was real, and the strategy made sense for a while. But now it's suffocating you. Being gentle isn't the problem. Gentleness is beautiful when it's born from power, not fear. The problem is that your kindness is laced with terror. Terror of not being chosen, of being misunderstood, of being alone. And that terror has kept you in emotional handcuffs for too long. But here's the shift. You don't have to stop being kind. You have to stop believing that kindness is the only way to deserve love. You have to stop shrinking every time someone else frowns. You have to stop performing harmony at the cost of your truth. Because the day you stop fearing their disapproval is the day you finally hear your own voice. That voice has been waiting, quietly, beneath every forced smile, every swallowed word, every exhausted yes. And when you let it speak, not with violence, but with clarity, something shifts. People might not all like it. Some might even walk away. But what stays will be real. And more importantly, so will you. You say you're calm. You say you're not angry. You've trained yourself to be the bigger person, to rise above, to take the high road. But if we could crack open that silence, what would spill out is not serenity, it's rage. Not the explosive kind, but the slow-burning, suffocated kind. The kind that simmers in your gut, behind your eyes, under your smile. You don't scream, but you're drowning in everything you never allowed yourself to say. This isn't about becoming violent. It's about admitting you're already being devoured. Because suppressed anger doesn't disappear. It mutates. It turns into resentment, sarcasm, anxiety, guilt, chronic fatigue. It turns into passive aggression, into overthinking, into a body that always feels like it's at war with itself. Jung said it clearly. Everything that you repress becomes part of your shadow. And the anger you thought you buried? It's not gone. It's driving your life from beneath the surface, and you don't even know it. You see, anger is not the enemy. It's the alarm system of your soul. It tells you when your boundaries are being violated, when your needs are ignored, when your truth is being silenced. But you learned, probably too early, that expressing anger was dangerous, that it made you unlovable, scary, too much. So you learned to swallow it, to perform calmness, to call your rage overreaction. But emotions don't vanish just because we deny them. They go underground, and from there, they rule. Every time you avoid a conversation because it might be too intense, every time you laugh off something that hurt, every time you say it's fine when it's not, you are betraying yourself. And betrayal always leaves a wound. You think you're protecting others by hiding your anger, but what you're really doing is abandoning the part of you that knows what's fair, what's sacred, what deserves defense. The part that's trying to keep you alive. And the most dangerous part? That suppressed anger turns inward. When it has no place to go, it attacks the host. You. That's why your self-talk is cruel. Why you sabotage your own progress. Why you punish yourself for not being nice enough. The anger has nowhere to go. So it goes to war with your confidence, your worth, your body. It whispers, you don't deserve better. Not because that's true, but because your anger wasn't allowed to fight for what you needed. This is why you can't ignore it anymore. The peace you're performing is poisoning you. True peace only comes when the war inside you has a voice. Not to destroy, but to demand change. To declare a limit. To say, I matter. I'm not okay with this. I'm allowed to take up space without apologizing for it. Letting your anger exist doesn't mean losing control. It means finally taking the wheel. It means reclaiming your right to feel. To say no. To not explain yourself. To confront what needs to be confronted. Because anger, when integrated, becomes clarity. It becomes courage. It becomes the fire that burns the mask, not the world. So stop apologizing for being human. Stop hiding the part of you that's been screaming into a void. Let that scream become a sentence. A truth. A boundary. The real danger isn't being too angry. The real danger is dying emotionally in the name of being nice. And you weren't born to be nice. You were born to be whole. People know. They might not say it out loud, but they feel it. They feel that you won't say no. That you'll over-explain, over-apologize, overextend. That you'll twist yourself into whatever shape is needed to avoid tension. And they use that. Sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously, but they use it. Because once someone senses you don't know how to protect yourself, you become easier to control. Not through force, but through your silence. There's a psychological pattern here, one most people never name. When you don't believe in your own value unless it's validated by others, you make yourself emotionally available to anyone, even those who drain you. That's not kindness. That's a vulnerability leak. It's what happens when your identity depends on external peace rather than internal clarity. You've been taught to see conflict as danger, when sometimes it's actually proof that you're alive, that you're standing for something. This isn't about blame. It's about awakening. The people pleaser in you wasn't born out of weakness. It was trained into you. You learned that love was earned, not received. That safety came through compliance. That disapproval meant emotional abandonment. And so your mind crafted a brilliant survival strategy. Be useful, be likable, don't disturb the waters. And it worked, at least at first. You were praised. You were needed. You were kept close. But now, you're not a child anymore. And the strategy that once protected you is now destroying you. Because the truth is, when you don't set limits, people will test them for you. Not because they're evil, but because human behavior naturally seeks structure. When you don't offer structure, when you don't show people where you end and they begin, you invite chaos. You invite overstepping. And most painfully, you invite invisibility. You think you're being easy to love, but you're actually teaching others to ignore your needs. And it doesn't stop there. Being easy to dominate isn't just about saying yes too much. It's about doubting yourself every time you feel something strong. It's about second-guessing your instincts, holding back your truth, rationalizing others' bad behavior because they didn't mean it. It's about becoming your own manipulator, convincing yourself that discomfort is love, that exhaustion is loyalty, that silence is strength. But it's not. It's just the residue of a life where you were never taught how to stand still in your own center. And that center? That's where your power lives. Not in aggression, not in domination, but in unwavering clarity. The kind of clarity that doesn't need to yell or beg or prove anything. It just is. And it commands respect without ever asking for it. Here's the shift. People will only treat you as seriously as you treat yourself. Not in theory, but in action, in tone, in the energy you carry when you say, "No, that doesn't work for me." In the way you don't flinch when someone tries to guilt trip you. In the stillness you hold when the room gets tense, but you stay rooted anyway. That kind of presence doesn't come from rehearsing comebacks. It comes from healing the part of you that still believes being chosen is more important than being whole. It comes from realizing that your softness doesn't have to mean submission, that your empathy doesn't have to mean availability, that your worth isn't a currency to be spent keeping the peace. You want to stop being easy to dominate? Then stop abandoning yourself to be tolerated. Let your clarity be louder than your fear. And watch how everything starts to shift. Not because people change, but because you did. You spent so long trying to be what others need that you've forgotten what it feels like to simply be. Not useful, not agreeable, just real. And now, when you try to look at yourself, you don't see a person. You see a reflection. Not your own, but a collage of expectations, judgments, subtle punishments, and unspoken rules. You've become what others wanted you to be, and in the process, you've lost the memory of your own face. It's the mirror effect. When your identity is built on other people's approval, you become like a mirror that only reflects what's in front of it. Whoever looks at you sees what they want, and you let them. You've shaped yourself to fit their hunger, their fears, their projections. You've been the listener, the fixer, the calming presence, the one who never complains. But what happens when the mirror shatters? What happens when there's no one to reflect back at? The emptiness hits. The identity crisis creeps in. Because if you're only kind when someone needs kindness, if you're only calm when someone else is anxious, if you only exist through their gaze, then who are you when the room goes quiet? This isn't poetic despair. It's a psychological fracture. You've outsourced your sense of self, and now you live in fear of disappointing those whose opinions built your mask. And that's the danger of the mirror. It seems harmless, but it slowly erases you. Every time you silence yourself to avoid conflict, you lose a piece of your voice. Every time you pretend to be okay so others feel comfortable, you distort your own reality. Every time you shape-shift to be accepted, you abandon your own center. Until one day, you're surrounded by people who love the image you've created, but have never actually met you. Here's the cost. When you live as a reflection, no one truly knows you. And that loneliness is deeper than physical solitude. It's the ache of being surrounded, yet invisible. And it's not because people are cruel. It's because you never showed up. You sent your representative, the pleasing version, the digestible one. And now, even when someone tries to love you, it can't reach the parts you've hidden, because those parts are locked behind glass. This isn't about becoming rude or abrasive. It's about remembering that you are more than what others expect of you, that your value isn't defined by how well you perform calmness, that your presence isn't a tool for someone else's stability. You're not a mirror. You are a being. You are not here to reflect others. You are here to be seen. So what now? You stop adjusting. You stop anticipating. You stop asking, will they still love me if I say this? And start asking, will I still respect myself if I don't? You stop editing your soul for the comfort of those who never asked what it cost you. And you let the discomfort come, because discomfort is the birthplace of authenticity. And yes, some people will be shocked. Some will pull away. Some will miss the mirror they once admired. Let them. What remains will be real. What stays will know you, not the version you performed, but the self you reclaimed. And when you finally look in the mirror, not to see what others see, but to recognize what you've restored, you'll understand why the shattering was necessary. You were never the reflection. You were the one behind the glass, waiting to be found. You played the role so well. The kind one, the stable one, the one who smooths over chaos without asking for anything back. And maybe it worked. Maybe people liked you for it. Maybe they even praised you. But deep inside, you know what it cost. You feel the weight of all the truths you silenced, all the rage you disguised as patience, all the grief that came from being loved for who you pretended to be, not who you actually are. Carl Jung once said, "You don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And there it is. The darkness isn't outside you. It's the part of you you've exiled to keep your persona intact. That smiling version of you, the one who always says it's okay. That's not your soul. That's your armor. That's the mask you built to survive in a world that never made space for your rawness, for your fire, for your no. And the tragedy of that mask? The more you wear it, the more you believe it's you. Until one day, you look in the mirror and can't tell the difference between protection and prison. That's the psychological cost of constant people-pleasing. You don't just lose your voice. You lose access to your own truth. You become emotionally mute, spiritually disoriented, and dependent on others to define your worth. You become a ghost in your own life. Machiavelli knew this dynamic long before modern psychology gave it a name. He warned that being loved is fragile because love depends on the will of others. But fear? Fear is within your control. And though Machiavelli spoke of rulers and politics, the lesson applies to your inner world. If you build your life on being liked, you will forever be controlled by those who might stop liking you. You'll walk on emotional eggshells. You'll shrink in moments that require expansion. You'll tolerate things you once swore you'd never accept, all to avoid losing a love that was never truly unconditional. That's not peace. That's captivity. You're not being good. You're being controlled. And here's the most painful part. The world you created through this persona, it doesn't actually love you. It loves the role you play. The emotionally available, always forgiving, endlessly supportive character. But you? The one with complex feelings, with limits, with sharp edges and unmet needs? That version has been buried, censored, forgotten. And if you don't stop now, you'll lose her forever. So this is your rupture point. The mask served its purpose. It protected you when you didn't have the tools. But now it's suffocating you. And you have a choice. Continue the performance and die a little more each day, or break the illusion and risk being misunderstood. But in that risk, there's freedom. There's truth. There's life. And sometimes, survival isn't about being softer. It's about becoming untouchable in the places you used to bleed. Sometimes, love isn't about being liked. It's about being seen. And sometimes, clarity doesn't come in the form of acceptance. It comes when you finally walk away from the room you've been shrinking in. So here's the final truth. You don't need to become someone else. You just need to stop performing who you're not. And if that hits something real in you, leave a comment below. Let me know what part of this echoed in your silence. And if you want more of these truths, if you want to keep peeling back the layers, subscribe to this page. That's how I keep this space alive. No algorithms, just clarity. Because sometimes the most dangerous mask is the one you forgot you were wearing. And the only way to take it off is to stop needing applause for wearing it.